I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
I don't think you know this yet, TJ, but this is going to be a fantastic podcast.
I don't know that yet, so we'll see.
I'm real jazzed about some of the things that we're going to explore.
Excellent. Good. I'm expectant. Is that the right word?
Many of you longtime listeners will know that one of TJ's favorite sayings when I over-exaggerate the success that we're going to experience is prove it.
Prove it. Just prove it. It's fine.
Puts all the burden on my shoulders, which is exactly where one's wanted, because we could do this all ourselves and not destroy our hearts in the process.
Yeah, that sounds like it's accurate.
Last time we hit how each of the types get the love we want, but this time we're talking about how we experience that love. I have never thought about this being two very different things going on in myself, but they are.
Sure.
And so Enneagram-wise, it gives language to not only how I'm getting love, but how I really want to be loved in return, and that's worth exploring.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Come on. I don't really have anything to set us up with unless you want to talk about movies. You got a favorite love movie scene, somebody experiencing love?
Maybe we should pass on that.
My favorite experiencing love moment in a movie is Rocky, and breaks me every time, just in case you haven't gotten a chance to watch the last 2 minutes. It's great.
Yeah. I think that my favorite movie about love, we brought this up last time, and I wasn't sure about what my favorite movie about love was, but I think way up there is What Dreams May Come, which was also discussed before.
You're the one that likes that movie.
I love it so much, and I know very few people who have even seen it. I love it so much, and his willingness to stay in her hell is just this beautiful, the self-sacrificial, I would rather be with you in hell than alone in heaven kind of thing.
Man,
it's great.
The way you phrase that, I assume I was not mature enough to appreciate that theme.
You also have to. If you're the type of person who has a hard time with a traditional view of hell, you also have to overcome some philosophical issues with that movie. So, yeah.
Got some flames?
It's more like Dante.
Yeah.
Their presentation of hell is much more like Dante. I think it's great and beautiful, and I don't believe in it at all, but I think it's a beautiful movie.
Center of the circle.
Yeah.
Satan is eating Judas and Brutus and Cassius, pooping them out and then eating them again.
Right.
That is Dante's central. That's as bad as it gets.
Circle. Yep.
That's the center circle.
Yep.
Which makes me laugh. That makes me go, okay, that's interesting.
It's so Catholic. Oh, man.
It's quite medieval is the way that I suppose I interpret that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We talked about refuge in the streets just a little while ago. In terms of you mentioned the Renaissance and saying we just skip past some of that.
Yeah,
dung in the streets and the rest.
Yep. Let's not revisit that part of history.
Who needs to get some sainthood is whoever invented the sewer.
Yep. Seriously, special place in heaven.
Whoever that was, I don't know who it was, but she was smart.
Yep.
We're talking about experiencing love. Okay, so Just like last time. So when we talked about getting love, we focused on affect and stance. These are two of the triads. This time we're focusing on a different triad, which is intelligence center. And we're also going to emphasize the heart's message here. And I think there's just a lot to be said in those places for how we experience love. Because to start, all the things that we experience come through our intelligence center. Each of the types receive the world in a certain way, through their head, through their heart, through their gut, and just an enormous amount to say. That's really common. If you've been into the Enneagram for a little bit, you've probably heard that kind of language, head, heart, gut. That's our primary center. I want to pause for 2 seconds and introduce another part of that, which is called the secondary center. And that is the place where each of the types, it's their, how would you phrase this? What's the definition?
It's sort of like
center?
you have the primary center that like does all the heavy lifting, and then the secondary center supports the primary center.
Yes.
So, for example, ones are in the gut triad, the body triad. They're action focused, intuition, take in the world through their body and have a physical experience of being in the world. And their secondary center is their heart. So an easy, quick way of saying how ones navigate the world is that they act on their feelings.
Correct. And we can do, especially with those types that are not 3s, 6s, and 9s, all of them are kind of on, if you were to look at the Enneagram symbol, they're on a line with one of the other intelligence centers.
Right.
So 1s are on the line with the heart, 2s are on the line with the gut, 4s are on the line with the head, 5s are on the line with the heart, 7s are on the line with the gut, and 8s are on the line with the head.
Yep.
Each of the types, you have your primary center, and for all those types, they also have their repressed center. So those are 3 centers.
Right.
We'll talk about 3s, 6s, and 9s, so don't you
we
worry.
get our own special category.
But this is very important in how we receive love. The only reason we're spending time on kind of this setup is I think it's so valuable for how we receive love, and so we'll end up referencing a couple of times. So just kind of get that in your head, that you bring in the world through your primary center, head, heart, or gut, but oftentimes you have a secondary center that needs to be named. We are also going to be talking about time. Last time we talked about the orientation to time with stance. So I apologize for all the footnotes up front.
But it helps set the stage for what to expect as we talk about this. Take all your notes now so that when we get to these references later, it makes a little more sense.
There's a payoff.
Yeah.
You know what somebody needs to do, TJ?
Write a book?
A great book with lots of visuals that would
really
display this, that you could just like see it.
Yep.
If you have not yet gotten a chance to see our recent episodes on time, do look at those. But there are 2 orientations to time with our types. There is the one with stance. How you are getting things has an orientation to time, but how you receive the world has often a different orientation to time, and that is where we're going to go today. Yep. When you receive love, it's going to get filtered, and that's the big idea. Whenever you see the world, it's being filtered through your type, and you need to put a name to that, because when somebody is trying to love you, it's going to be filtered through who you are, and part of that is your orientation to time.
Right.
You have thoughts on intelligence center and the orientation to time there?
I think we'll talk about it as we go through this, but if all of this is very confusing, I would say either you'll figure it out as we play, or you should pause right now and go back and listen to some of our time episodes.
Yeah. I think that you'll get it. If you just jump to your number, or when we get to your number eventually, you'll know exactly what we're talking about as we start rambling.
Agreed.
Or at least when I start rambling.
Yeah.
TJ will be bringing the pain.
No,
all wisdom.
It doesn't sound as much like I'm rambling. I am. I just bring the confidence to the table that makes it sound like I'm not.
I want to say, do you want to flip a coin and see which number goes first? I don't have a preference. Where do you want to start
Have
today?
a 9-sided coin. What are you talking about?
I feel like we never start with the sevens.
Great.
Let's start with the sevens.
start with the
Actually, there's a
sevens.
great reason to start with the sevens this time, which I'll name later.
Cool.
Sevens are going to filter the world through the future. The future is uncertain. That is their intelligence center. They're filtering it through their head, which has a future orientation to time.
Right.
Sevens need to know that they're going to get taken care of. That's their heart's message. So let's just start there. Sevens have a future orientation to time in terms of how they receive the world, and they want to hear they're going to be taken care of. Sevens, because they're taking the world in through their head, filter the world with a future filter. They are very aware of what's going to happen. And this is why they have an underlying feeling of fear. The future is uncertain, and they don't want to be stuck.
Right.
They want to make sure that they got some opportunities.
Right.
The heart's message for the seven is you will be taken care of. This is a traditional list, and we're going to talk about all the types on this front. But sevens in particular need to hear that all the things that they need will have resolve.
Right.
And this is just a deep longing for this type. Before we get into how sevens experience love, anything worth saying about how sevens receive the world?
This is a good summary with a lot of buzzwords, but it's really about like sevens are scanning the horizon and looking for the next thing. Like we all exist in the present moment because that's how reality works. But sevens are continually looking at what's coming. They're looking for the way to get out the door if they need it, or what comes next. They're planning for their future continually, and that's just like that's their place in the world, is to be looking at what's coming next.
Yep.
So they often, in fact, struggle with being present to what's happening in front of them because they're looking at the horizon.
Yes. The sin that's often associated with sevens is gluttony. It's a very physical sin. It's a very body-oriented sin. And this is a good place to elevate the secondary center for the sevens. The secondary center for the sevens is their body, is the body type. They're on that line. They're right next to eights. They need to hear you will be taken care of as their heart's message. But that's a very physical, intuitive message. This is why when Breaking Bad, when going to their shadow side, they begin consuming physically. And so here's my theory, and it's going to set up most of our conversation. I think that we experience love and the things that we need in our secondary center. I think it plays out with all the types, and at least for our conversation, I think it's just worth talking about, because this over and again strikes me as something we may not just see. Our secondary center is very important. I'm kind of saying it, but our secondary center is important because this is the place we experience the affection of others, and it should be named. Notice how it is with sevens. You will be taken care of. They need to know that physically. They need to know that intuitively. They need to know it not in their head necessarily. I think it's a physical thing, because notice how they try to get that need met on their own. I'm going to overconsume.
Yeah.
I'll play that out in the future with the other types. We can just come back to it. But anything we're saying in terms of the heart's message, when loving a seven, you have a seven in your life. When loving a seven, how is that displayed for them? If you really know the Enneagram, what does it look like to love a seven?
I think leaning into that idea of your needs will be met, the things that you need to survive, those are going to be taken care of. In order to meet needs, you have to fulfill something physical. And so like looking at how sevens are like that sort of action-based planning, it's not just that they're looking to the horizon, but they're already moving toward that horizon. They're on the go. They're continually looking for the next thing, and that means they're actively looking for the next thing. And so, when you are trying to fulfill that heart's message, to sort of like present and help them understand that their needs will be met. You have to fulfill their needs, which is a physical experience.
You have a best friend who's a 7.
I do.
What does it look like for you to say, I really care about you, to that 7?
In a lot of ways, it is leaning into providing the intuitive sense and space that the things that he needs from me are going to be present.
Yeah.
So it's not about saying it. I can tell him these things all day long, but that doesn't fulfill that need for him. It's so much about it being provided in ways that he can't he can't necessarily point at. It's known, it's felt, it's there, it's present, it's real.
Is there something about the physical adventure, the physical exhilaration, even the adrenaline, the sugar high, the cocaine buzz for 7s, that all seems very physical in terms of, like, you will see a lot of 7s will really struggle with their weight because of the consumption that's going on in their lives.
Sure.
There's something physical there in terms of wanting to meet that need for what they really want most.
Right.
And that's their secondary center.
Right. And I think it's easy to sort of over rely on that as a sign, but it's definitely there. Like it's because this is how 7s are in the world. It's present in all aspects of their life, but there's so much of it that is like it expresses itself continually in the physical world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think each of the types, as we talk through them, are going to become more clear the more that we hit this image. As I look at the list is in front of me. It just jumps off the page if you write it down. So if that didn't make sense, just listen to the others, and we'll probably reference 7s in the future, 7s, 8s, and 9s as we get going. But filtering the world through the future, 7s need to just intuitively grasp that they're going to be taken care of. That's one of the best things you can tell a 7. Your presence in their life, meeting them in that space, making sure they physically know that, with a heart towards, I understand that the future can be terrifying, and that seems like a robust message of love.
Right. And providing those things, like telling them that there will be food, is different from having food.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Like food is easy to point at because it's, something that we all need. But in so many of ways, the things that 7s are going to struggle with, saying it out loud is not going to have the same kind of impact as just having it, providing it, and giving it to them.
Yeah. TJ and I sat at a table of folks teaching Enneagram this week, and there were 2 7s who communicated that they had stockpiled at least a month's worth of nutrition in their basement.
Right.
And notice how physical that is. Right. Notice how future focused that is. Notice that it is here.
Yeah.
Resources available.
Right.
That's even them making sure the opposite here is also true. The way 7s receive love is oftentimes how they are loving others in return. I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of my family and make sure that you have what you need.
Well, and it's also it's an expression of this idea that it's not just that 7s want to live their best life. It's also that they want everyone around them to live their best life. Mm-hmm. So it's not for the 7 who is a provider for their family. It's not just that they want to make sure they have enough food. It's that they want to make sure their whole family is part of that experience as well.
Yeah, correct. This is going to play out. This idea, this lens is going to play out as we get to the 8s. 8s are going to filter the world through the present. 8s are in the body type, so they are going to be present focused in terms of how they receive the world. 8s, 9s, and 1s are all resistant to the present as well. So just have that in the back of your mind. It's not just that we receive the world through the present, but there's also this hitting the present with our energy that's important. 8s need to know that they will not be betrayed. notice how present focused that is. That's
Right.
not about the future. That's about right now.
Right.
You will have seen that movie where the turn happens and lo and behold, Joe betrayed Charlie. And that was the thing that turned the whole movie. And it's like it's right now. It's
Right.
visceral.
Right.
It's visceral.
Yeah.
Visceral
Betrayal
is
is
a body
presence.
word.
The thing that lasts after betrayal is something else, but betrayal is a present experience.
Secondary center for eights is their head. They need to know they're not going to be betrayed.
Yep.
You'll notice that eights push boundaries, hit people in the face with their words. They are testing you all the time.
Yep.
That's not about their gut. They're not receiving things necessarily intuitively.
Right.
There's a radar for how reliable you're going to be that is coming out. And that's why they're crass, why they joke the way they do, why they push you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an eight, this is how you assess whether or not the person in front of you is trustworthy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The eights do have a very intuitive sense of people. That's part of being in the body triad. So realistically, if an eight isn't pushing against you, either you've already proven yourself to them, or they already know that they don't need to test you, which could be good for you or really bad for you, because they don't like that means that they don't give a crap about you at all. And so like that testing is about coming to some kind of cognitive understanding of how people react to things.
Yep. The shorthand is that eights intuit their thinking.
Right.
And that's why they're so fast.
Right.
And it's also why notice what their target often is. It's not just, I don't want to be betrayed, but I don't want to be vulnerable. And in this place and at this time, I'm going to be strong. And that's the process
Right.
going on in the heart, mind, and soul of an eight.
Right. They have like that thinking is so quick, but it manifests in they don't even have to come up with a plan. They're already acting on the plan that they've already come up with. And it's because that thinking happens so quickly and then moves into action right away.
If you're going to love a 7, you need to respond to their body. If you're going to love an 8, you need to engage their mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing here for me.
Yeah.
It's the experience of love. We need to know what if somebody in my life is an 8, which, as many of you know, my oldest child is an 8. I need to know that the best possible way to love this person is to love them in their mental life.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does it look like for me to get to that place?
Yeah. Engage their thought process, give them opportunity to understand you and the way that you were thinking and like spell things out, and more importantly, be faithful to what you've said.
Yes.
8s don't tolerate liars. And when you tell them something and go against what you've said, that can be even small, stupid things that can be a small form of betrayal.
If I'm predictable, it gives the person in front of me a lot of strength. They know how I'm going to be in the world. They don't need to guess.
Right.
They don't need to have their radar out. If I say what I'm going to do and do it, if I'm direct, if I am aggressively honest, here's where you stand.
Yep.
That's very easy to mentally comprehend.
Right.
And that gives the 8 power.
Right. And it also means that they don't have to do any work to figure something out, which is energy they would rather be spending doing something else.
Yep. I'm going to save the punchline for when we get to 1s and 2s, but there's a huge punchline here when we get to how coping style works, which I'm just going to tease. But
Cool. Fun.
getting to the 9s, and here's where things get complicated. So if, just in case it didn't get in the weeds enough.
Which is exactly what 9s love, complication.
You know what 9s do love when they're given the microphone is saying, you know what, here's how things work for me.
And only me. I can't speak for all other 9s.
You're our prototypical 9. This is how this podcast works.
Yeah, and as a prototypical 9, I can't speak for everyone else.
Well, we'll note that. And everyone listening will assume that you are speaking for nines.
All right, great.
Nines are going to filter the world through the present, just like eights. Nines are also resistant to the present. You will see how that materializes. Those of you who know eights and those of you who know nines will understand both of them are resistant to the present in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
The heart's message for nines is nines need to know that their presence matter. Nines don't have a secondary center. Well, let me restate this because this is where things get confusing.
Yeah, it gets darn those 3, 6s, and 9s.
TJ, talk about how the centers work for the nines.
So 3, 6s, and 9s all. So like Jeff talked earlier about that line that you could see. So 1s are in the body triad, but they're next to the heart triad. 8s are in the body triad, but they're next to the head triad. 3, 6s, and 9s are all right in the center of each triad. So for 9s, we take in the world through our body. That's just like 8s and 1s. Our body is our primary center. But because we're in the center, it's also our repressed center. So our secondary center is actually both the other two. So for 9s, our primary and our repressed center is our body. And we have equal access to thinking and feeling. For 3s, we'll get to this, we'll talk more about this when we get there, but for 3s, their primary center is their heart, and their repressed center is their heart, and their secondary center is equally doing and thinking. For 6s, their primary center is their head, their repressed center is their head, and they have equal access to their body and their heart. So getting back to 9s, the way this works is that we take in everything through our primary center. But unlike 8s and 1s, we don't engage from our primary center. So thinking and feeling are simultaneously our secondary centers. And some of us lean more into one or the other. There's theories about this that you draw more from one than you do from the other throughout most of your life. I kind of go both ways on it, so I guess it depends on who you ask.
I need to think real hard about why this is the case, but for 3s, 6s, and 9s, they need to hear their heart's message in their primary center.
Right.
You have to flip a coin, apparently, on this one. When I think about it, 9s intuitively need to grasp, physically need to grasp. It needs to be like, it needs to resonate with them that their presence matters. Perhaps you can speak more to that. I don't know. I know why it is for everyone else, but I don't know for the centers.
So to take this to metaphor land for a second. So we sometimes call this, we've referred to this as the intelligence center sandwich. Like if you think about it as a sandwich. So going back to 8s, the top part of the sandwich, the primary center, is the body. The middle part of the sandwich is the head, because they're right next to that head triad. The bottom part of the sandwich, the repressed center, is the heart. So you have these three stacked together. Now 3, 6s, and 9s are a little bit more like an open face sandwich, because we both repress and both our primary and our repressed are the same one, and the other two are sort of equal status. So where every other type has a secondary supporting, like clearly this is how this works, a secondary center that supports the primary center. 3, 6s, and 9s, the sandwich is shaped differently. So the thing that we need is still in our primary center, because that's actually the most deficient as well.
That last word is ringing in my ears, that perhaps when somebody tells you that they love you, it needs to move into that place of deficiency for those three types.
Right.
I'm sure there's logic here. This is one of the great things about the Enneagram is it is true about reality, and we're still discovering, like the structure is there, and it's almost like you're discovering a dinosaur skeleton and you just have seen the head and you're like, I wonder what else is here.
Right. Or for so many of us, I'm sure there are scientists out there that like gravity is not a mystery, as or at least as much of a mystery to them. But for me, I don't understand what gravity is or how it works at all. I just know it's true.
Yeah.
I do not understand necessarily why I receive love in my primary center while Jeff receives love in his secondary center. I just know that it's true.
There it is. A lot of things when talking about the inner life, the best you can do is say, tell me your story. Tell me how things work. That's all the Enneagram is. It's just 10,000 different stories that have been systematized. And here's what motive looks like.
Right.
Here's what receiving love looks like. So there you go. The punchline is that for those of us who love nines, it's not about giving them a message that they can comprehend.
Right.
And it's not about appealing to their feelings. It's about physically showcasing how much their presence in our lives matters. Notice even the language of Heart's message is dripping with intuition.
Right. The easiest example I can give for this is I have been a part of many different productions in my life. And you can say into a microphone that I am valuable. But if my name isn't in the program, then I know intuitively that something's off. And like that's like a really pithy sort of superficial way of getting to this point. That we have this joke about like when we bring up the Heart's message for nines, Jeff says out loud to me, your presence matters. And it's like, great, I love hearing that. That's awesome. And it means nothing because I need to feel it. I need to feel it in the way that you value my time and my contributions, and the things that I do matter to other people because my action center is repressed. I need to know that that action center is important, and I need to know it in an intuitive way.
I hadn't even thought about how it's all of this is almost a call to us living out our virtues.
Right.
But that's entirely right.
And I'm sure we'll see that play out in 3s and 6s as well.
If 7s are taken care of, they can be sober. If 8s are not going to be betrayed, they can be innocent. And if 9s presence matters, they can act.
Yep.
Man, that's all over that. I'll play that out with the rest of the numbers, but that's exactly what happens is if I'm loved, then I will be invited into my best self.
Right.
That's what the list of virtues, which we'll hit in maybe writing a book that has a lot of that going on in it. The list of virtues for each of the types. If you're loved, it's an invitation to be your most virtuous self. Virtue is human excellence, by the way. That's Aristotle. When you are the virtuous person, that's living the best life, the happy life, the fulfilled life, the joyful life. And it's each type experiences that in a different kind of way. You want to get to some 1s? Anything else to say about 9s there?
I don't think we talked about time for 9s, but taking that love in, understanding that intuitively you are loved is a very present moment experience.
Yep. You'll notice that's why the shadow side of 9s is moving into places where I believe my presence doesn't matter, and therefore I engage sloth.
Right.
And that's how I express my anger into the world.
Right.
None of you care. I'm going to go over in the corner.
Right. Or to add a little nuance to it, I think it's more that I don't matter, therefore I'm going to go into the corner. Not necessarily that none of you care. It's that I don't matter.
Oh, sure. That's actually worth noting that in the same way that 1s are hyper angry at themselves in terms of their sin, that still bleeds over into 9s.
Yeah. Yeah. It's much more about I don't matter than you don't care about me.
That's a good word. That's important. We'll get into the 1s then in the same way. If 1s are going to filter the world through the present, and 1s need to feel that they're good. This isn't an intuitive thing for 1s. This is a heart thing for ones. Ones are on the line with the heart triad. And the heart's message for the ones is that they're good or they're whole, or they're complete. You got thoughts on that dynamic of how one receives love from the world?
I think with ones, it gets a little bit more sort of confusing with ones because like the heart as the secondary center, it's harder to say to showcase how love is experienced in that place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like it's easier to say this is how it doesn't work.
This is important, the difference between intuitions and feelings.
Yep.
I routinely stub my toe on that and find myself thinking about it. This is my quick and dirty distinction. Intuitions are not about other people.
Yeah.
Feelings are about relationships.
Yep.
Intuitions are about controlling every detail of the universe that has nothing to do with a human being.
And understanding that you can't point to.
Yes. And so a lot of our understanding intuitively isn't the relational. I wonder if is there such a thing as a relational intuition?
I think yes, but again, it's relational in nature as opposed to an understanding based on your body or your energy of a space.
Here's where time really helps. The intuitive center is about right now. The relational center is about what's happened in the past.
Sure.
The intuitive center, when it comes against the present, gets angry. The relational center, the emotional center, when it comes against conflict, it gets shameful. It digs into where was the anxiety caused in my connection with others. That's where the heart triad is. The intuitional center is all about control and autonomy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the English language doesn't have the clean words that distinguish intuition from feeling as well as one might hope, I suppose.
Right.
But that's where I go.
Yeah. I like that. On that. That's a good distinction. Relationships versus not relationships.
So with ones, they're intuiting. They have a gut feeling about their relational life. And that's how they come to the world. Have a repressed thinking center. And so much of ones is fire, ready, aim.
Right.
Unless they have some systems that they can lean into. And that's why so much of the life of a one is I just need to build up structures, principles that I can lean into, because otherwise I'm entirely intuition and feeling, and that can get out of control real fast.
Right. Right.
Doesn't say anything about how ones receive love, but that's how we are in the world, just in case you wanted to know. The feeling of ones then is they just want to hear that they're good. I have all sorts of thoughts on this, but I would love your thoughts. Like, how do ones receive love?
Well, I feel like we have talked about this before, but I think it's good to say over and over again because it has to do with people that ones already care about speaking that truth into their lives over and over again. Mm-hmm. And
I have a theory about that, by the way.
And even like working against so ones, twos, and sixes, but everyone, and more closely ones, twos, and sixes, and going in a little bit further, mainly ones have this voice inside their head that's constantly criticizing everything that they do. And when there are people around a one who can counteract that voice and say, no, that thing that you're saying about yourself isn't true. Here's what you did that's actually good, and like work and speak love and goodness and rightness into their lives, that is the place where ones hear it, is in their relationships.
Yep. If you're a one, I'm going to say one of the most important things I'm ever going to say on this podcast right now. This is a perfect storm for you. It's twofold. You're thinking repressed and you're resistant to the present. So you need other people to tell you over and over again that you're good. but because you're resistant to the present, you can't receive it. My favorite teacher I've ever had is the great Bonnie Creddy, who was way overqualified to be teaching high school civics. Definitely a 1. I have tried to tell that woman how many times, countless times, how much she meant to me, and she never receives it. And I know exactly why. It's because she's like me.
And because you're not directly in relationship with her.
Well, she may have a, you want.
Well, just like is that someone that you spend regular time with?
Well, I spent 3 years. I mean, I took every single class she had. Like, I go back.
You took classes from her because that's her job, but you weren't in relationship with her.
Well, say it's the case that you invest all of your life into some students, and one of them comes and says, I want to tell you how meaningful all your work has been. And you say, oh, it's not a big deal. It's just, you're just throwing me a bone. Occasionally we need some bones. Have you not experienced that with ones? That they dismiss
totally.
Compliments?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is really common with ones that is their resistance to the present, paired with their own self-criticism, paired with another layer, which is thinking repression.
Right.
Their thinking repression ends up being exactly what you said. 1s, 2s, and 6s all need to hear over and over and over again whatever the message is.
Right.
Because we just can't get it into our heads.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that we struggle with the neurosis that we have,
Right.
of 1s criticizing themselves, of 2s routinely trying to get the love of others when oftentimes they are deeply loved, and 6s being neurotic about the future.
Right. And that, like, for 1s, the place where that comes in is specifically in relationship with others.
Yep.
And that, like, your high school teacher can have people say that to her till the cows come home. It doesn't matter unless it's people who are regularly, consistently in relationship with her.
Yep.
Because it has to come from that feeling place.
Fun fact. In my class, just my class, we had a school of 300 students. We had one class, it was called Senior Honors. It was just a humanities class. Mm-hmm. In that class, there are 5 of us who teach college, one of whom went to Harvard and got his PhD, and one of whom went to Stanford and got his PhD. Mm-hmm. I'm a scrub from Colorado University, but and there's a handful of us who are like, one woman is a administrator in a Denver school district. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just all of us were so inspired by this woman. And I can tell her that. Yeah. And her response to me was, it's so great to get a bone from time to time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. This means, I suppose I'm spending a lot of time on this because it meant so much to me in the moment. She dismissed it so hard. And her Enneagram type is entirely over this.
Yeah. And
there are ones out there who do the same damn thing, mm-hmm. and you don't know how to receive love.
Right.
You just don't.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to communicate.
Yep. It's true. Has to come from that feeling center.
Has to come from the feeling center.
Yeah. Which means relationships.
On the flip side, and now I'm going to take back everything I just said. She did receive it, but because she's resistant to the present, she's incapable of receiving it in ways that are in the moment and well played.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. If you love a 1 and you tell them how amazing they are, they're resistant to the present and they're constantly criticizing themselves.
Right.
And they're thinking repressed. Your message is going to feel like it's hitting a wall, right, bouncing back to you. And if you're like me, you just get pissed off. But it's actually the case that they hear it and they receive it. And that's the thing.
Hours later, she may have processed that in really valuable ways to her.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
The thing about 1s, they don't have an anchor in the past. You know when she might have processed it when things got bad.
Sure.
And if 1s, when they can get to their stress number, sometimes we can hear the compliments. It's a real interesting thing about this is when ones can go to the high side of 4, really internalize and say, who am I? What's my role in the world? What is mine to do? You can actually hear the language of others washing over you and what they've said to you from that posture. Because then you're using the tools of 4, which are past oriented.
Right.
Okay, so 2s. 2s filter the world through the relational past. 2s, 3s, and 4s all have a past focus in terms of how they receive the world, and this is why they struggle with shame. It's a relational focus, it's a past focus, and everything that they experience has that coloring.
Right.
2s need to physically grasp, intuitively grasp that they're loved.
Right.
We've talked to Suzanne Stabile on our podcast. It's an easy example, but she routinely brings up the fact that she's adopted.
Right.
This is not a place of success. A loving family didn't select her out of all the countless thousands of children they could have selected. I was born to parents, and I was born, and then they had to take care of me. Suzanne Stabile was selected.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. She was physically abandoned is what actually her processing of that is. Mm-hmm. And that's for 2s, that's just an example. 2s will have that image of where are the places the relationships have gone badly. Right. Who didn't love me?
And entirely based on some kind of intuitional sense.
And there it is. Because they need to feel physically in their intuitions that they're loved.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would be real curious if 2s more than other types need to be hugged or get gifts.
They are often this is not this. I'm not giving people permission to go up and hug 2s, but often 2s are very physical in their expression and their reception of affection. Cambry, in one of our episodes in the past, described 2s as the wettest type, like most likely to be sort of weepy, which makes sense. I get it. But it's... So we talked in the last episode about how 2s are essentially just looking for appreciation. Like in relationship with 2s, it's really, really valuable to show appreciation for the things that they do. And that... While that's true, it's also the case that is more about acknowledging their usefulness and the way that they actually experience love. So, like, by acknowledging, by saying thank you for the things that they do, you're basically showing them that you recognize them and that they are valuable to you. But the way that they are most likely to actually feel and experience and take in real love is by being taken care of the way that they take care of other people.
Yep.
And that is an intuitive sense that is oftentimes actually physically doing things for them, like cooking meals, baking cakes, or whatever, or taking care of their physical space or their physical person in some way. It's also meeting some kind of need. It's meeting their needs the way that they meet other people. That's part of how they actually feel love, and it is intuition based.
It's a great call. All the types are going to be of that sort, that we often try to love people the way that we desire to be loved. Right. A really easy way to see this is gift givers.
Yeah.
Gift givers almost always want to receive gifts. And that's why they're giving gifts all the time.
Right.
Right. Huggers, they want to get hugged back.
Right. Yeah, there's a whole conversation that could be had about the 4 love languages, but we're not going to, because that changes everything.
We got through 2 of them.
There's still there is a sense of naturally loving other people the way that you want to be loved.
But you definitely see it with 2s.
Yep.
And that's a great word. It's worth talking about for all the heart triad, how much the relational past has power. Mm-hmm. 8s, 9s, and 1s are resistant to the present, and that's almost a posture. Like we're just always fighting against the present and we're angry. You all won't know this, but TJ and I spoke for 20 minutes prior to our recording about all the things wrong with the world.
Right.
Because the world's on fire. And I in particular, who was the primary voice of anger.
Yeah, you need to get some stuff out. It's cool.
But that's not how it is with the heart triad.
Right.
It's about what has happened in the past.
Right.
And that filters. I love the idea of a filter here. You are putting on glasses. You're seeing the entire world. Every detail that you see, I see. But the heart triad sees it with that relational, here's what's gone on in all of the relationships I've ever had filter.
Mm-hmm. And for twos in particular, it's because within that sandwich, their thinking is the thing that is most hindered.
Yep.
So they don't process that information appropriately. And it's all about feeling like a gut sense of their relationships and what can they do in their relationships.
Another perfect storm there in that twos, well, I suppose both thinking repression and earning go together. Maybe that's just how it works.
Right.
Because you can't think through all the things you've already done for people, you just pony up again and what can I do? What can I do?
Right. Right.
Ones, twos, and sixes all have that struggle.
Right. And how it plays out for twos, like in the same way that you can say it to nines all day long that their presence matters, it doesn't matter if you don't show them.
Yep.
You can say to twos that you were loved all day long, and it doesn't matter unless you show it to them.
We have a triad now. Sevens, twos, and nines are all the ones who need to receive love physically. And so we've talked through them all, and here it is. We've said it from a different, it's all different vantage points. Sevens taking in the world through the future, twos through the past, and nines through the present. And they all need to physically be loved in different ways, but it's very much how they're receiving the message their heart craves.
Right.
Come on. Threes. Also filtering the world through the relational past. Threes need to feel. They're, again, going to be in the center of their triad. So like nines, threes are going to take the world in through their heart. They're going to respond to the world through action and thinking. But when they receive love, they need to receive it through their heart.
Right.
And they need to know that they're valuable.
Right.
So you got thoughts on threes?
Yeah, that's... if you're paying attention and you've done some study before, you're hopefully starting to see the pattern really show itself.
Yep.
And like threes are their sort of internal sense of themselves is that they don't have any value apart from what they do in the world. And what is most valuable for them to feel and internalize and take in love is relationships with people who care about them, not about what they've done, but about them and invest in them and are around in their failures and in their successes and celebrate them when they're really great and celebrate them when they're really struggling.
Another one of those places where the Enneagram was there 20 years before I got there is this with threes. Because the dynamic of taking in the world through your past and responding to the world in the future is 100% how my wife functions.
Right.
It's all about how things have gone in the past relationally. And by God, I'm going to make sure that on Wednesday, this doesn't happen again.
Right.
I'm going to make sure that I win Wednesday.
Right.
We're on Sunday, but Wednesday is mine, and I dominate Wednesday, especially in the mind and hearts of people that I care about who are going to tell me that I'm wanted, that I'm doing a good job, that I'm valuable.
Yep. And this is part of why threes are working so hard to be impressive, is so that people around them will care about them.
Feeling repression, however, with threes. And so just like ones, I suppose, on some sense, there's like this barrier. You got to get past the barrier. But threes are feeling repressed. And it's feeling repressed with their own feelings.
Right.
Can't understand their own feelings. How do you get past that barrier?
I would say that for most threes, they don't get to the point where they don't understand them. They stop themselves before they even get there. They're not engaging with their own feelings. It's often the case that we talked about this in the last podcast, that threes are performing feelings in order to be successful in relationships.
Yeah.
And so even their own feelings, it's not necessarily that they don't understand them. It's that they have their own stuff in this little box on a shelf where it's safe.
Yeah,
and,
that's a good way to put
what
it.
they're putting out into the world is performative and reactive to what will help them look really successful.
The way I read that is there's a prioritization taking place. Here are our goals. This is where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
I have clearly thought through these things, and I'm going to act on them. Feelings get in the way. I have feelings. They're over there.
Right.
But I know what's primary in terms of getting what I want. But I certainly, this is where the feeling repression, yet feeling dominance of you take in the world through the filter of feelings, but you don't engage the world through feelings.
Right.
This is what's gone on in the past. And so I'm going to think and act in a way that gets me where I want to go.
Right.
And that's the move. That makes a lot of sense to me. As I say it, I realize there's you threes that are listening. I know you could have said that way better than I just did. I'm like thinking through the 12
There's
threes
a
I
much
know.
more efficient way to say all of it.
That's what I was looking for.
But also, they wouldn't say it in this way, because when you tell threes that they aren't engaged with their feelings, they're like, no, that's nonsense. Because they have feelings.
Many of us who know threes find them incredibly valuable, are befuddled by how well they do in the world, the things they accomplish. And yet that is the thing they need to feel from the people who are closest to them in their lives.
Yeah, and it's that relational engagement.
Yes.
Over and over again. And I think in particular, especially in those moments where the thing that's happening is not praiseworthy or quote unquote successful.
Yeah, give an example of that.
Like if the three that you're in relationship with is experiencing something that they might call failure, and you're engaging with them and still telling them how great they are, or say they are, like, I know so many threes who really struggle with expressing grief because grief is so messy and like you can't win at grief.
Mm-hmm.
So it's often the case that they sort of put it aside and they perform the necessary visual elements so that other people can see that they are being successful, but their actual experience of grief isn't really happening. So when they do experience it, especially if it's in front of someone and that person engages with them and can potentially tell them that what they're doing is good and healthy and appropriate, and like that is a really valuable moment for the three to experience love, to be told that even in their failure they are still loved.
Yep. Another big obstacle here is the intelligence center. You've mentioned this in the past, that the loss of a person needs to get into the past before a three can actually engage it.
Right.
All the types, 2s, 3s, and 4s, in order to engage the loss of a loved one, it has to get into the past.
Right.
The tools that the 3 has are future focused. That's how you get what you want. It's by focusing on the future. And if you have loss, it's very difficult. That's why 3s, 7s, and 8s all are going to really struggle here.
Yeah.
You got future tools. How do you deal with loss?
Yeah.
That's going to be, you're going to have to really elevate your repressed center to get there.
Right. Yep.
Long story short, though, the 3s need to hear they're valuable, especially from people who care for them. I think especially from people that they have a history with.
Yeah.
One of the things that's real interesting to me, I know I've said it a handful of times, my wife is as accomplished a high school teacher as there is in Colorado. Doesn't care about any of the things. Well, she does care about what her students say. She does care about what the administrators say. The one thing she really wanted to see was she really wanted her mom to come watch her teach, which never happened. And there's a history there. And there's I want you to see my value. The person who I've had this long history with, I want you to see my value.
Right. Well, because her mom has seen the absolute worst parts of her.
Yeah. Oh.
That's like it comes down to like with history comes depth of knowledge and experience. So if I were to meet Kelly today in one of her classes and think she is the most amazing person that I've ever met and like try to engage and be in a relationship with her, that's cool and she would be on board. And also what I have to say, it wouldn't speak to her value apart from whoever she was presenting that day.
Yep.
Because I haven't seen, in this scenario, I hadn't seen her at her worst. I hadn't seen things that she might be ashamed of, the ways that she's failed or messed up or whatever else. But people that are in relationship, especially longevity of relationship, you have an opportunity to see some of those failures. You have an opportunity to be present for the things that the threes don't want other people to know about. And then when you can still say, you were valuable to me, that has meaning.
Yep. Pushes further into her past focus. If you just meet the three and say, you are the best teacher I've ever seen, and you may have all the letters next to your name, there are.
Right.
It's still the case the person from your past may outweigh you.
Right.
Because of the filter.
Right.
I'm sure there's a ton more to say there. I feel like we're just scratching the surface, so I apologize. But it feels like there's so much there. Let's talk about fours. Likewise, relational past. Fours need to know their scene. And you'll notice, again, their secondary center is their head. They're on the line there with fives. And the cognitive element for fours who come across as so emotional, they need to know things. I have a four in my life who's routinely texting and inviting feedback.
Yeah.
That's a knowledge thing.
Yeah.
Do you see me? And speak into this. I need to know it.
And like we said about ones, that like the easy way to describe the sandwich is that ones act on their feelings or react to their feelings even and think about it later. Like that's how you describe those intelligence center sandwich. Fours feel their thoughts. Like fours spend all of their time and energy processing their feelings and thinking about it and thinking about the feelings and feeling about the thinkings. Round and round it goes. That's what they do. So the place where that has to come in for them is in that cognitive sense, so that they can process it and feel it and think about their feelings, and like it can work its way into their natural process, just like working yeast into dough. Like it just has to become something that becomes a part of them through the way that they interpret and interact with the world.
Yep. I really want to hear your thoughts on how the filtering of the past ends up relating to wanting to be seen, because I think that ends up being the real core thing, that move. I'm taking in the world in all its kaleidoscopic beauties and tragedies and energies, and yet I want to be seen. Mm-hmm. The perception of fours is vast and, it's robust. It's voracious in terms of being able to see the colors.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I want to be seen. And that's how I'm told that I'm loved, is that in all of that, somebody notices me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's found right there in that sort of that cycle of feeling my thoughts and processing my feelings, that's centered in where I've been, what I've experienced, how my experiences have crafted the person in front of me. Like this is one of the reasons that like thinking about fours seeing beauty in the world, you have to understand that there's a reason that something becomes like something is valuable because it has a story. It has a reason that it became this way. Like fours, so much more than other people see the value in grief, in brokenness, and they see beauty in that. And part of that is because there's a history that leads up to that brokenness. There's reason behind it, and there's nuance and that like there's a story to be had there. And
Yep.
like that's all about the past. It all works together. So in hearing, in experiencing, in trying to internalize the idea that I am seen and understood, you also have to see some of my history to know who I really am.
Yeah. It's that law again that the way I love others is the way I want to be loved.
Right.
I can see you. I can see your story. I can see all the things, and I want you to reciprocate. I want you to be able to see all the depth of my story,
Right.
and that's how I'm loved.
Right.
Yeah, and we can go through all of the types, and it just consistently, how I love other people is how I want to be loved.
Right.
Has to take place for the fours in their head. There's something about being able to articulate to fours, here's the big thing. Here are the nuances that I understand about you.
Yep.
That's what matters.
And because of that, coming back again to that cycle, they have to spend time processing it.
Yep.
Like you'll see this in the other two types that have to take it in through their head. We talked about it a little bit with eights. Eights are very quick thinkers, so understanding this concept comes through their intuition as well. Like it has to come in through the head, but it's also it's tied to their intuition. But with fours, because it's tied to that emotional state, like you have to say things to them. You have to get them to cognitively understand something so that it can work its way into their heart, so that they can think about it, so that they can feel about it, so that they can think about it, so that they can feel about it, and become a part of them. But it enters in through a cognitive understanding so that they can then move it into their heart. And in a way, it's like it has to become a past experience for them.
That's what it is.
So that they can process it.
Yeah. Is it not the case that fours' own understanding of themselves actually needs to get into the past before they can appreciate it? In
one way, yes. And that's the easy way. In another way, I would say that's not quite accurate, but then I'll have to get into all kinds of other things. And so, short answer, yes. I think their understanding of themselves is very, very, very complicated. And
are you saying that fours are complicated?
yes.
I know exactly where you're going, and I also am like, man, I don't know that we have an hour to talk about
We
this.
just don't have time, and it's not going to help us get to the point of our focus right now is about experiencing love. And
here's the thing, fours, that's how depthy and amazing you are. It's that we can't even go there.
Right.
It would take us so long to actually plumb the depths of how amazing and beautiful and complicated you are.
right. And even then, we couldn't really get to it clearly. It's just like sort of a general outline.
I mean, just brushing the
Take-
surface.
Hours to explain.
We'll get into the fives then. We're going to move back into the future. Fives filter everything through an uncertain future. Fives need to feel in their hearts that their needs are not a problem.
Right.
This is, again, one of those that the more I get to know fives, it just blows up as the obvious thing.
Right.
They're taking the world in through their head, which has a future focus, And so they're worried about resources, but they're on that line with the heart triad. And so when they receive love, it's going to be emotional.
Right. And notice that 5s are the type that are most likely, like we talked about, non-engagement, non-involvement, and like they're sort of, the homeostasis is trying to be unattached to what's happening around them. And part of that is that they feel internally like they have this, like, one of the things that's driving them is that their needs are going to be too much for other people. So they keep it all in and try to detach. And the answer to that problem is experiencing from other people that their needs are not a problem.
Yep. There's something about 5s that do have a voracious appetite for making sure that they have everything that they need: knowledge, resources, assets. If somebody steps into that space and says, you know what, I got this whole element of your fears taken care of, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And I think with a lot of these things, it's hard to point at concrete examples, but I think with 5s, there's actually some really easy things. When 5s share themselves with you, you have to take it seriously.
Yep.
That's how you show them love.
I would love to talk about the emotional lives of 5s, because it's one of those places 5s often come across as, I don't know how else to say this, they end up being kind of a bizarre number. When you look at the Enneagram symbol and how all the arrows work, you're kind of like, how does this work? When you get stressed out, you go to 7. The thing with 5s also, and perhaps is the biggest thing, is that there is a robust emotional person there. And that's not how they come across in the world.
Right. Well, and part of that is that they are looking to categorize those emotions and keep them in control in a way that doesn't place the burden of those emotions onto other people. Because again, they feel like their needs are going to be a problem. So they keep it to themselves.
It's that front.
Yeah.
It's that, here's what I'm offering the world to understand me. But what I'm offering is a very protective, wall-like, cognitive, data-driven facade.
Yep.
But right over that wall is a very emotional person, because that's their secondary center.
Right. Yeah, their emotions, their heart supports all of that thinking and data processing and observation.
Yep.
It's because they care about the things that they're looking at.
We think 4s are the ones thinking about their emotions. Nope. It's the 5s.
It's 5s that are thinking about their emotions, yeah. 4s are feeling their thoughts. 5s are thinking their emotions.
As such, when stepping into the life of a 5, there's a move that you understand what that 5 needs, and meeting their needs. That 5, like all of us, we can't take care of all of our needs, but 5s in particular are aware of their needs and aware of the places that they can't get to, the places they want to get to provide for themselves. But if somebody else steps into that space, that's connection.
Yep.
This is often why 5s outsource a lot of their relational lives at times.
And specifically to a close other.
Yes. And that is trust. That is, I can't do this entirely myself, but it's something I know is very, very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I often see 5s partnered with 2s.
Yeah.
And it's a way of sort of letting someone else do work that you're not good at. And it also is giving an opportunity, like in the healthiest sense, it's also bringing on a tool to help you improve this thing that you're not good at.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, just romantically, the 5s in my life are routinely attracted to and connect with 2s, 4s, 7s, and 8s. And I bet we could go through all of those pairings and say this is why.
Yeah.
2 of those are on the line, 8s and 7s.
Right.
And when you're on the line relationally, you provide things in stress and security. But I know, Cambry is married to Cambry, who is a 4, is married to a 5.
Right.
And you and I know countless 5s who are married to 2s.
Right.
And that's an interesting thing. The 2 shuts down their own needs, provides love, affection, relational connection. The 5 shuts down their own needs, provides the stability of reason, data, insight.
Mm-hmm.
Very much a giving relationship.
Right.
In which they receive.
Right.
Bang. Your needs aren't a problem. You want to speak to that heart's message for 5s in terms of the love they receive?
Well, I think it is. We've sort of touched on it without saying the actual words, but that's where that sense of like we say hoarding a lot and protection and like collecting and keeping and storing resources is just part of the 5's way in the world, and like they part of why they do that is because they need to make sure that they have everything that they need should they ever need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that you take care of and love and support and really like speak to that heart for the 5 is whenever those needs do come out, which they inevitably will because they're a human being, you take it seriously. You work really hard to make sure that they don't feel exposed or incompetent or deficient, or like it's often the case that those needs will come out in a expression of fear. That's often the case of like when 5s feel like they can express their need, or even when it just sort of like bursts out of them, it'll express itself in a place of fear. And if you don't take their fears seriously, you don't communicate love to them. Yep. So like if you really want to love them in that moment, you who is related to them in some way will let them know that their fear is reasonable, and you will do everything you can to meet them in that.
This is another big epiphany for me as we're talking, is a lot of times those fears are about their physicality.
Mm-hmm.
You have talked about how as a 9, you really want somebody to love you in your physicality. That was in our last podcast. You talked about your partner in terms of providing food. Right. And make the resources. Right. I think that's probably true of 4s, 5s, and 9s, is that there's something about the provision physically that matters. I know with my youngest child, who's a 5, it's about when he gets sick, that's the place that really I know that he needs love and he doesn't feel like he has the resources. He doesn't understand his body, and he needs somebody to step into that spot.
Right. And he's not going to get that love from the internet, because the internet is just going to tell him that he has cancer and he's going to die. And he's not going to get that love necessarily from a doctor, because a doctor is a stranger.
Entirely right. Oftentimes moving very quickly through things. Oftentimes doctors don't care about his emotional life.
Right. At all, because that's not their job.
Just moving through the other types real quick. 1s, 2s, and 6s. I know that one of the things that's most attractive to me about my wife is that she can speak wisdom into all these places that I'm thinking repressed. Mm-hmm. And that is a place of real connection. And I imagine for 3s, 7s, and 8s, when you have somebody who really is able to engage your feelings in really robust, worthwhile ways, that matters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's something worth putting a pin in, that we are attracted to people who shore up our repressed center.
Sure.
I
like it.
That's some stuff. Anything else about the 5s?
I'm not sure that we talked that much about their fears being about the future and like experiencing love in that sort of future, like we will take care of you kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that.
I will take care of you kind of way.
That brings us full circle we have gone around the circle. 5s, 6s, and 7s all filter the world through an uncertain, deeply chaotic, you can't predict anything that's going to happen future.
Yeah.
That's how you take the world in.
Right.
All the heart's messages for 5s, 6s, and 7s focus on the future.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be taken care of. You'll be safe. Your needs are not a problem.
Right.
All of that is about the future.
Right. Yeah, and it's not for 5s. It's not meeting their need that they have in the present moment. It's addressing the fear that they have about the future.
Yep.
Because it's probably going to be the case that the way that they are expressing themselves in a way that has real need, like one of the reasons that I keep saying you need to take it seriously is because it might be the case that the 5 who has an enormous 401k is deeply, deeply nervous about their job prospects. And that's the place where you need to meet them. And you can't dismiss their fear because they're prepared for the future. You have to engage their fear in real time, which is going to be about something that is probably not going to be a big deal because they've already prepared for it.
Yep. Just because you got a big ass bank account doesn't mean you're not terrified.
Right.
Death is coming for you. Sickness is coming for you. The people you love most might leave at any moment. Just because you have a great stock portfolio doesn't mean you're not living in terror.
Right.
There's the outsourcing of emotions. I need a 2 next to me who can really make sure that the people in my life stand by me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for a lot of the rest of us, you would look at that scenario and say, why are you worried? This is a silly thing to be worried about.
Yes.
And what you're specifically saying to the 5 is that your needs are a problem. Because you're saying that their fear is silly.
Well,
it's a huge problem for 5s.
And I mean, all of us have that.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, if somebody tells me to take life less seriously, I don't need to be so self-critical. I mean, I can ramble for a while about why you are
and I've
mistaken.
seen it. Don't ever say that to Jeff when I'm around because I don't want to have to hear it. I get it. All right.
Fears. So. You know what? Somebody needs to write a book about how to wrestle with the fears that we have. TJ?
You would think.
You would think that would be out there and very brilliant, diagrams by Cambry Ross that are easily accessible.
Starting to see a theme here.
By the way, dear listener, if you've made it through to this point, that book's coming out. I'm gonna stamp it. It's gonna happen. You can always upload a digital file to Amazon. They got printing presses. I actually have a book that's printed on demand by the Amazon. You can buy everything new at Amazon.com and not at your local bookstore.
That's true.
I'm one of the few people who will admit that, I suppose.
And if you even have local bookstores.
That's right. Those don't exist. Seriously, we live in Greeley, Colorado, town of 150,000 people. Our university has 15,000 students, and we don't have a bookstore in our town.
No, we have 2 now.
Oh, that's true.
We were having this conversation a year ago. We don't have a local bookstore. But now we have 2.
God bless Midnight Oil. I forgot. All right, we come around to the 6s. Again, taking the world in through the uncertain future. 6s need to know in their heads that they're safe. And all you 6s are saying amen. Because that's what all you really want, yeah?
Yeah, or they're saying, but how do we know?
How do we know that we know?
How do we know?
You take a philosophy class with Jeff Cook, and I'll teach you epistemology.
Oh, man, that would... I know a bunch of 6s who would be like, nope, never doing that.
You know what? You can't ask for something and then have a legitimate, robust solution and then dismiss it.
Yeah,
I mean, you can,
that,
but...
say that to all of humanity.
Here's a worthy answer to all the problems that you have. Yeah, I'll set that aside.
I don't really want to do that.
I'd prefer fear and conjecture.
It's what I know, man. It's familiar.
You want to talk about sixes needing to know they're safe?
Yeah. So sixes, like we're ending the circle, but we're also capping off the 369 problem of taking in the world through the same place you struggle. So sixes take in everything through data processing, categorization of information, and sort of like I said with sevens that they're scanning the horizon. Sixes are also scanning the horizon, but for different kinds of things. But they don't engage from that same place of data and categorization. They actually that's the place where they get stuck. So everything comes in is like, this is what the world looks like, and then they sort of get stuck in figuring out what to do next. So in experiencing love, in experiencing connectedness and like really feeling like people care about them, the place that happens is in some kind of cognizant understanding that they are safe, which, as we've said several times, this actually becomes like it becomes its own problem because their thinking center is the repressed one. They're also constantly questioning that. So it has to be like you essentially have to like work really hard as someone who loves a six. You have to work really hard to reason your way to showcasing safety.
One of the things that always hits me here is that sixes don't have an anchor in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And just like all the types, when they don't have an anchor in one of the time slots, it can become problematic.
Right.
And so sixes don't have past tools to inform their fears that they're experiencing right now in the present.
Right. Another way to say that is they don't remember when things went well.
Yeah. We said this in the last podcast that fours, sixes, and eights, they come across in these ways oftentimes, especially when they're struggling, where they need to hear something from others. And that's actually how they're connecting with the world. That's how they feel seen. That's how they know they're not going to be betrayed. And that's how they feel safe for the sixes. And so for those of us who love fours, sixes, or eights, oftentimes it can become overwhelming that we need to meet them emotionally in these spaces. But this is the place they experience love. And so if we do love them, when we enter these spaces, we're doing huge work.
Right. And like you have to do it in a thinking kind of way.
Yep.
Like you have to reason with them. You have to explain it. You have to lay it out and show it. Like you have to show your work.
We've talked about the emotional response triad, which, by the way, this coping style, 4, 6s, and 8s, they need to have their emotions validated. Notice how cognitive that is.
Right.
It's not about feeling something or intuiting something. That's very much just speaking into the intellectual space, yeah?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and for sixes, it is so often that sixes will, especially when they are connected to someone that they feel at least a little bit safe with, they're going to make their fears known. And we, historically, me and Jeff, but also the entire Enneagram community, we've done I think a poor job in sort of caricaturizing sixes, but like in them bringing their fears to the table, they're sharing part of their heart. And
Yes.
when we are dismissive of that, we're actually we're not taking their fears seriously. Just like with fives, if you don't take it seriously, that's a problem. But with sixes, it also really helps to reason with them through their fears. Like that is how they start to feel safe, is by starting to understand cognitively that they are safe.
It's again, if you're meeting them in their repressed center, you're loving them. And all the types are there. And so if a 6 is in your life and you love them, that's where you're going to do a ton of groundwork.
Right.
It's real easy when I think about this to say that about all the other types. And it's unfortunately, we've talked about the stigma with 6s, that a lot of 6s don't like the fact that they're 6s.
Right.
But all the types have issues.
Right.
We just do. You may see your issue as socially difficult, but 8s are routinely seen as abusive jerks, and they need somebody to step into that space and shore up their feeling center.
Right.
You know, we can go around the circle with all of our inadequacies. I don't mean to just pick on 8s, but you can take it 8s.
They're not listening anymore.
Yeah,
anyway,
they took off. That's why I feel permission. Nah, but I think that's valuable.
Yeah. It's also the case that part of that reasoning will have to do with addressing their past.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, like 6s don't remember their past. And part of the work that someone who loves a 6 has to do is remind them of their past, remind them of the places where they actually have. Not only are you safe here in this house, but also remember when this thing happened when you were alone and you handled it well. Like just reminders and like bringing up their own past to help inform their present and sort of put a cap on some of those future fears.
Yep. That would be worth talking about for a minute. 1s, 6s, 7s, and 8s all have no anchor in the past in terms of their stance or their intelligence center. Mm-hmm. And all of them are going to struggle because of that, right, in terms of remembering what has happened. I know I can speak to that personally. One of the most valuable things my wife speaks over me is compliments, and she's a 3, so she memorizes these things. Here's what happened. Here are the deep successes you experienced just 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. That ought to feed my heart when I'm looking for somebody to tell me that I'm good at the things I do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And
she's befuddled.
And it's like for you, it's, I know you're worried that things aren't going well right now, but remember 6 months ago when things were great and you moved on from them so quickly. Celebrate your victories.
I mean, that's it. It's not just celebrating them, it's kind of remembering them.
Right.
You do understand that these 20 people told you that the most important person that ever came into their life is you. And you can't remember that?
Right.
Of course I can't remember that.
Right. Because you're already moving on to the next thing.
I got to move on to the next thing. Yeah. I live entirely in the present moment.
Yeah.
So too with 6s.
Yep.
Don't have tools to pull from the past to say, here's why the fear that you presently have doesn't have the power that you're assigning it.
Right.
Boom. Anything else with 6s there?
Nope.
We are around the circle, my brother.
We did it.
I'm not wrong in saying that that's some gold content. Sometimes when you and I pick up a topic and I know it's gold because we haven't talked about it before and nobody else in the history of humanity has talked about it before. And we're going to dive into some stuff. And that was part of the thing that I was anticipating with this. It was like, well, there's some stuff here. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, it worked.
And by the way, if anyone wants to say Helen Palmer talked about this in 1980, you're probably right.
And also Hurley and Dobson.
Did they?
A lot of our stuff is taken from like the idea of the intelligence center sandwich.
Oh, sure.
I learned about that through Hurley and Dobson.
My stuff, this is correct. I was referring more to receiving love in your secondary center.
Sure.
I don't feel like that's been hit yet.
Sure.
I'm just going to footnote that for all future research, if you're actually a honest, praiseworthy academic and are doing footnotes, Around the Circle podcast was the first one to put their rubber stamp on.
Or at least the first ones to systematize it.
Come on. That's enough for me. Einstein systematized relativity. He gets a historic footnote.
Yeah. Counts.
Come on. You know what else counts?
What?
When you share this podcast with somebody that you love, preferably somebody who needs to understand how they experience love and has never been able to put language to it.
It's a great segue.
I think that if I were actually to love somebody, shoot, this is my type. You want me to make your life better, TJ?
I mean, we're still in a relationship together, so I must need something.
If only somebody needs me to
run
make
for
their
the
life better,
hills
it'd be
yet.
great. I need to figure this out. Maybe I need to read an Enneagram book to figure out how to wrestle with this. But long story short, this if you're a 1, you could at least share it with somebody who needs to make their life better, preferably somebody who needs to know how they experience love.
Yeah.
That's what I
That'll
got.
help. Yeah.
We're on hour 2.5. Dear listener, it would mean the world to us if you took 2 seconds. Give us some stars on iTunes or Spotify, or simply share this on your social media. The music here is obviously by The Collection and by the great Brian Claxton from Greeley, Colorado. And you can find all the links to all of our stuff at aroundthecircle.org. That's what I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing, man.
He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome and incredibly patient with me when I'm having, like, seriously, if I listed the stuff going on in my life this week, I have 10,000 pounds of hay that hit me this week. I'm just trying to get through this podcast, which went way too long. But hey, TJ, guess what?
What?
I love you.
I love you.
And I hope you experience that love.
I do.
Oh, there you go.
Hope you experience mine as well.
I do. And I'm Jeff Cook. And who you aren't isn't interesting. Be who you are. You'll set the world on fire.